Hello, this is Grandma Jan from Red Toad Art Studio, and today I'm going to try a new kind of collage to me. I've done a torn paper one, and I've done some little things in the past that I considered decoupage and not collage, but I've not tried a surreal magazine collage, which seems very hard to me to make something beautiful like this lady look surreal. Now, I've been practicing my fussy cutting, and I've fussy cutted quite a few things out for practice. So I decided to try to make a collage from some of those things that I've already cut out. And in my magazine, I found this beautiful lady, which is going to be the focal point of my picture. And I found several other things, which I'll show you later. I found a big ring and some glasses and some plants. But what I need to do is choose my background. And I pulled out several pieces of paper that I felt would work as a background. I decided to get my color wheel out and see if it could give me some advice on what colors to choose. And since there's so much reds on the mouth and in the skin tones and a little pinky color, and there's actually a kind of a purplish color. And we want to see what the complementary color is to show us the one that would be most contrasting. If I choose violet, it would be yellow. And a red violet, it would be green. And pure red would still be a greenish color, opposite colors. I decided to go with the yellow. So I pulled out several yellow pages, pink pages, orange pages, and see what she looked best on. This is one of them that I pulled out that was possibility. It was interesting the way it changed colors from the yellow to the pinkish, and it has an orange tint in there. I liked that one. Let's see what else. I pulled several. Then I went with a yellow, and I thought that was interesting, but not quite as interesting as that one. So maybe I'll lay that one aside for now. I like this because it has the greens in it, and I think that's pretty, and that's a possibility. So I'll put that in the possibility pile. And orange. Orange shows up well. I think that's interesting. But, I don't know, orange and red, questionable. It's possible. This one I think is really interesting because I guess it has the yellow and the reds in it to go complementary here. And here, this looks real nice too because it's a greenish tint. It's along with the yellow. And for me, it's hard to choose. But I think somehow this one struck me as different and kind of neat. It's not exactly complementary because there's not any green in it. But I use green in other things, and I want it to show up on this piece of paper. So I'm going to try it with this. What do you think? Let's lay these aside. And what I did, you see the size of it? Since I like to have an edge to my pictures, like this, I cut a template that I can lay on a piece of paper and cut just the size I want when I want to make a complete backing. So let's do that. Let's take the template. And lay it on our piece of paper here. And if I cut it just like this, I'll have about the right size. Now I want to make a torn edge, so perhaps I should cut it a little big. So I'll go over here, about a quarter of an inch too big, and the same up here. And I've marked those two places. Get my cutter out. see how close I am to the right size. Real close. So I just need to tear my edges a little bit. Some of these papers tear easier than others. And to make it easier, I could put some water on this. And I don't think that's a bad idea, the way this is tearing. Get me some water. I'm going to dampen a brush and just run it along the edge. And let that soak in a minute. And then it will be a lot easier to tear my piece of paper. Let's see if that helped. Ah, yes. It doesn't come off in big strips now, but it does come off in smaller little pieces of paper, and it doesn't dip down so far into the paper I want to keep. Here, it's doing good. Always remember that if you want to make it easier to tear a piece of paper, add little water where you want the tear to be. There. And throw these little scraps away. It always helps to keep a clean workspace. Now let's see how it fits in my book. Just go through here and find a page 2 or 3 on from what I've done. I think this one would work just great. And how does our page fit? It looks like it's going to do great. Let's see if the lady fits on top of it. Some of her does, not quite all. She's a big lady here. But I think it will do just fine. We can trim off that edge there. The first thing we need to do then is to glue on this backing. And what I want to do is cover the page well in my stick glue. Now remember, when you're gluing, places you might miss for putting the glue on, that's when you're in danger of a bubble. So try to do a good coverage, especially of the edges, but if you haven't glued in the center well, you will have bubbles appear. And it's hard with these transparent glues, really, in a way, to see if you've covered it well. So be sure you get a good coverage. Maybe you can see in the light where it's not shiny, you've probably missed getting glue on it. See, I'm trying to be very careful. Now I'm going to look at it closely in the light and see if I missed any spots. It looks like I did pretty good catching all the spots. So let's lay this on very carefully. And press from the center out. Get all the bubbles and lumps and bumps out. This is a range cleaner. You can find these at your appliance stores. and possibly your Walmarts. I'm not sure. I ordered mine on Amazon, and I will leave a link to that. But it makes a great little tool for pressing out air bubbles. So, not too hard, but firm enough that it flattens all of the edges and presses out any bubbles. Now, some people like to put down, instead of stick glue, they use Mod Podge, or they use a wet glue. It seems to work for them, but I like the neatness of the dry glue in the stick. And then turn the page and do the same thing. Press it out as well as you can. If you see any visible bubbles, work on that until it seems to come out. Now, mine's coming out pretty good. Now, I also like to use a brayer. Now, my brayer looks really funny. It's an antique, and I'm not sure what it was used for. It might have been used in printmaking. It might have been used in baking, maybe for pie dough. I really don't know, but it works well, and it's a nice, strong brayer, so I tend to use this rather than my new one. And my new one's also a little smaller. So, I like to bray the top out and get rid of any edges sticking up, and then again go to the back of the page. And I think our background will be firmly put in place. There we go. Okay, let's see how our lady's fitting now. And I guess she should be the next thing we put on. I think I'm going to paste her all the way to the edge since she's a big picture. But I want the top of her head to hit the top of the paper and this to come over. I think that's what we'll do. I'll have to cut a little bit off there. So let's get glue on her. And again, we want to be sure we glue it well. We don't want to leave space for bubbles. Whoops. Okay, let's glue it. Now this glue, I had to get me a new little stick of glue. It's purple, so it will show well where I've glued. And I kind of like that. It looks terrible when you put it on, but it does dry transparent. So let's see how this works. If you do this, you'll find that your glue stick always runs out in the middle of the video, and you have to go get a new one. It's the fates. You will notice that magazine paper is very flimsy. And it wrinkles, and it pulls, and it tears so easy. And you have to be careful with it. Now check carefully to be sure you don't have any white spots. So I had one there and one there, because that's where we'll get a bubble for sure. Now it looks messy, doesn't it? But let's see if we can get it on there without too much of a tragedy. It's trying to wrinkle down here, but we won't let it. Now, remember, this is fragile paper, and when you go to use this, don't put too much pressure on. You may tear it. And I see wrinkles trying to form. I have read that the wrinkles form when we put glue or something like glue on it that has a wetness to it. It affects the fibers in your paper. So I'm rubbing out bubbles. I don't know if you can see the bubbles, but I can see bubbles forming, a little bit of bubbles, and I don't want those to stay. Give it a go over on this side. I can put more pressure on this side and not worry about tearing my image. The more careful we are with this gluing, the better our picture will turn out. Now let's give it our brayer. Okay, that looks pretty good, and any of the remaining should disappear when we let it dry with stacked books on top of it. There. Now we do need to trim this edge here, and I don't want to get too much of that glue on my scissors. Now you'll notice the glue is even causing my book page to like form a roll. And this will go away when we shut this book and put heavy things on top of it and let it set, say overnight. You will have a nice flat picture. So don't panic too much if you see that happening. Now let's look at some of the things I did as a fussy cutting practice and see if we can find something interesting to do with her. One of the first things I saw that might be interesting was a big ring. I got this out of a wedding magazine. Look at this huge ring. I thought that might make a great crown. And you know, I was going to put that under that before I glued it. But I didn't, and that's okay because I can just cut the edges. About like that, I think. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, I saw some glasses. And glasses always make these pictures look interesting. It's getting interesting already, isn't it? And I see that doesn't reach your ear, so I've cut out a piece of darker paper to make that reach your ear. My fingers are sticky now. Now, I thought something should be in here to look like eyes. And I found several things. Let's see what you think of these things. I found, first off, I thought it'd be interesting to have blueberry eyes. You should get this under there. Can you see that well? Let's point the blueberry end away. And I think that would be interesting, except they're so dark, they really don't show up. It looks just like sunglasses that have a few reflections in it. So, as I was going through my book, this came from my book. Well, this came from a magazine. I found these little jewelry pieces that I thought might look neat. They look like pearls. And that shows up a lot better, but it's not interesting. So, I looked farther. And this gives a really weird effect. Cat eyes. And on top of that, my cat eyes are two different colors. In fact, they're yellow and green, which was opposite what I was looking at on the color wheel. And I looked at that, and I thought that's the ones I'm going to use. It looks really weird. And surreal collages look weird, most of them, because surreal means it doesn't look real. And that is what's hard for me. I like to make realistic pictures and beautiful pictures. So you'll find through our trek through journaling that I have a hard time making surreal pictures. But I'm going to keep on trying, and many of them will really be weird. But that's all right. They're supposed to be weird. And then I was looking for earrings. Those match her crown, but, you know, it's surreal. And I found that, and I thought that would work. But as I was looking, I found another thing. Now, this came out of a storybook. This looked, I thought, more interesting. And I tried that. Now, I have to put the big one here to cover that. But that looks a tad more interesting. Don't you agree? Now, I also thought, what else can I do to this? And a woman with cat eyes probably has a tattoo. And what would she have a tattoo of? I happen to have a little lizard in one of my books. And I think she would have a lizard tattoo. Somewhere, I think down here on her neck. Like that. So, let's glue these down and then see if we can find something to do down here. Apologize. So be sure we glue all of his little claws. And I think see, that just shows you what will happen. It pulled my little leg off, but you know, it's glue, and when it sticks down there, you will barely be able to tell that. There we go. Now that I'm aware that this paper tears fairly easy when it gets a lot of glue on it, I have to be more careful. This glue is also exceptionally thick and wet. My last glue wasn't like that. This is a different brand. This is school glue, and I had a more permanent type of glue. What did I have? I had extra resistant, more permanent. And they're both the same brands, but it was different ones. And this that I got is just glue, school glue, and it's quite messy. I will go gently on this. There we go. Now, then let's put the eyeballs on the glasses separate. Be sure we get our pupils going the same way for each eye. He found me another little extra strength stick, which isn't quite as hard to work with, and so I'm going to do that for here. Their delicate place in the center of the glasses at the bridge, which would be easy to tear. So you have to be very careful. Okay. let's get this in. Let's see. I better mark where I need to cut this. Let's see how we did. Okay, that'll do. And here is the other part of her glasses. Now, I do need to give a roll of my brayer on this, but I want to wait till it has dried just a little bit. And while it's drying, let's look for some other pieces. We need something down here. And I found two things, well actually three things. And let's see, I'm not sure which one will work best. I found this interesting green, an arrangement in fact, that could go right there. Or in my book that I found the lizard in, I found this or this. And I'm not sure. I think this one is probably the best for size because this takes up the whole area. And which is kind of nice that it takes up that area. But I think we're going to go this. Yeah. This can go on another picture. So let's get that glued. If you notice some of my pictures being darker, my lighting situation is quite bad now. Some of our overhead lights need fixed. We had a mouse chew our wires, so now we have to wait for the electrician to come. So my lighting is not the greatest right now. There, I like that. Now, this isn't as cute as a lot of them I've seen people do online. But remember, I'm a beginner, and I'm trying to overcome my fear of making a bad picture. And I bet you, if you're a beginner, you will feel the same way. We need to overcome that fear and do it. If it's a bad picture, what have we lost? A few pieces of paper and some glue. And our time. But while we're doing it, we are learning some tips and tricks on how to do it better. And eventually, I hope, we will get better. Now, brayer time. there we are. We're all finished with our first magazine picture that we've done together. And I found that magazine paper was really hard to work with. But I think as we practice it, we'll get better at that. I really hope, because these were easier to use than these ones that were from the magazine. These were just very easy to tear. Now, in my practicing using magazine pictures, I did one other. I'll show you real quick, but we aren't doing this together because obviously you can't find the pictures more than once. I tried one of these that's a whole piece like a paper doll where you put it together out of various pieces. And I think I'll try that again online and we'll do one of those together. But what we need to hunt for is just faces and clothes that we can put together and backgrounds. And so you might look for things like that. This was fun to do, but still I look at it and say it could be better. But I'll probably always say that about something I've made. And so today we did the portrait style. And I do want to seal this with Mod Podge, which I'm going to do before I close the book and press it. And that's up to you. You can seal it or not seal it. But sealing it does help to protect it so these little pieces don't come up. So let's seal it real quick. Now I keep my Mod Podge in a little squeezy bottle here that's much easier to use than dipping out of the Mod Podge container itself. And it makes it much easier. Now remember, don't use a good brush for this. Mod Podge, no matter how hard you try, will end up burning your brush. I've had one that I used for 2 or 3 pictures and thought I was doing right, but it's as hard as cement now. So I had to go get another one for my stash. But start in one corner of your picture. Add your Mod Podge and just be sure you get it all covered and go over the edges. This will help seal it so it doesn't come up and you lose pieces of your picture. And go on to another section. It's amazing how messy this Mod Podge can look when it's wet and all these white lines on it. But it disappears and looks nice after it dries. And it doesn't take too long to dry it. Now, I like to let this dry almost all the way. And when it's just a little bendable yet, run my brayer over it. There. There's my Mod Podge. Be sure to put that brush in water. That's the only way you'll save it. And cap your podge. And then let this dry for a few minutes. And after it's dried a few minutes, I will be back with you. Now it's a few minutes later, and this is pretty close to being dry. So I'm going to braid it another time. And I do notice a few bubbles appearing, especially around my edges. And I haven't figured that out yet. Remember, I'm just learning, and I may try some different glues and different methods and see which ones seem to work the best. I'm not sure you can ever get rid of them all. If you have any answers to that, feel free to share it. There is my cat lady. I have hoped you've enjoyed joining me in making a portrait picture and enjoy the process. Now, I see places here that I tried very hard and I know I had flat that's getting a little bubbly. And if you don't like your picture, don't worry. You didn't lose anything except a few images, and you can try again. And the more we do, I really sincerely think the better we'll get. So what I'm going to do now is shut my book and put a heavy book on top of it and let it sit that way for 2 or 3 hours. And I have found out with the few I've done that it does tend to straighten these stray wrinkles out. So I'm going to say bye-bye for now. We'll be back with a different collage, trying things in a few days. And I hope you really enjoy collaging. Bye-bye for now.